I am here. I just didn't have my earphone plugged into the right little spot there, so I was flying blind for a few seconds. Good morning. It's 33 minutes after the hour. Get to work. And this is Wake Up, Bill. This is the Full Court Press, and I'm Bill Press. Good to have you with us today. Now, we all have our biases, and I want to give you mine right up front, okay? I am a former teacher, taught high school for 3 years, 2 years in Philadelphia, 1 year in San Francisco. I happen to think that teachers and nurses, I would add, have the most important jobs and do the best work in this country. So I'm particularly proud to welcome here to the studio the president of the National Education Association, Dennis Van Roekel. Hi, Dennis. Nice to see you.
It's good to be here this morning.
Tell us just a quick snapshot. What's the state of America's schools today? We in public schools, pretty good shape?
I think what we
better,
have is we have real examples of excellence all across this country. We have a real problem with equity. We have great schools and we have schools that aren't so great. We have schools that meet the needs of all the kids that come there, and we have schools that don't meet the needs. So I think what we have to do, as Finland said, their goal was never excellence, it was equity. We want to make sure every child, no matter which school he or she goes to, has a highly qualified and trained teacher, and they have the resources and the programs they need to succeed.
Is there any particular place where the schools lacking equity, the schools that don't come up to par, are located? Are they in big cities or rural areas or in the South or the West or what?
I think it's fair to say that you can go to any state and find the inequities. It's part of the system. It's just built in a way that doesn't really make sure that every child gets what he or she needs. And that's why it's so hard to change. It's a system. You can't just change one little piece and expect the whole system to change. So we're looking very much at how do you look at that whole system. What do we have to change in that system to ensure equity for every student in America?
Is it that schools need more money?
Part of the problem is money. Part of the problem is just things that don't encourage people to be where they should be. Example, in the high-need schools where serving children a lot in poverty, we have almost a revolving door of principals and teachers, and that's wrong. We need to find a way to get people into those schools, and they need to stay there. That's the way we know what works. It's collaboration. It's when the school board, management, and the employees in their union sit down together and say, what do we need to do in this school for our kids to make it work?
Is part of the answer, or is the answer paying teachers more?
When you look at the international scene and how they look at compensation, they see it as undergirding the whole system. What they say is that compensation has to be such that you can compete with other occupations that require similar educational background. We lose in that respect. We can't compete. So, for example, I was a high school math teacher for 23 years. Graduating from college with a degree in math, should I go into actuary science? Should I go into engineering, accounting, or teaching? Now, in the international leaders around the world say, let's keep all of those occupations that pay similar. Not exactly the same, but in the same range, so that my choice isn't away from teaching just because of salary.
Right. Okay. And in that case, in this country, the four you mentioned, teachers would be at
by far the lowest.
By far at the bottom of the totem pole, right?
And the gap is widening. I know when I started teaching many years ago, some of those careers I could maybe make twice as much. Now it's 4 times as much. So it's very difficult, especially in math and science and other fields, to get people to say, yeah, education is where I want to go.
It probably is an unfair question, but do you know what the average starting salary for a high school teacher is in this country today? I
would say the average is somewhere around $30,000 to $35,000. Some states are higher, some are lower. The average salary in America now is somewhere around $50,000 for all teachers. Way too low.
Yeah, I mean, $30,000 for and plus, as we know, I mean, as I know from teaching, it's not a 9-to-5 job.
No, and you know what's really hurting that more?
And there's a lot of responsibility.
NEA has over 3 million members. About 70,000 of those are college students who are preparing to be teachers. And when you talk to a group of those students in any group, say, how many of you have a debt from college? all the hands go up.
Yeah.
And then you say, how much? And it ranges from $20,000 to $60,000. Now, how do you start an occupation, a career, at $30,000 or $35,000 a year with a college debt of $60,000, and you still have to buy a house, you have to buy a car? It's just crazy. The cost of college has gone so out of sight, and so less and less of our students, especially those from middle class and lower income families, they just don't have a shot.
So here's what I never understand. Given what you just said, why is it that for so many politicians today, teachers, and particularly the teachers' unions, are the enemy? I mean, they're always complaining about them, campaigning against them. We got to get rid of the teachers' unions. I mean, all you're trying to do is get a good break for your teachers, right?
And for
your
the
members.
students.
And for the students, too. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure, as you said when you started teaching, I believed that if I cared enough and I worked hard enough, I could deliver for all my kids. And you soon realize that's not possible. There are so many decisions made outside of my classroom that impact my kids. For example, No Child Left Behind. The idea that a federal law could so impact the day-to-day life of every single teacher and student in America is unbelievable. I mean, they've narrowed the curriculum. They've put this overemphasis on high-stakes tests. They have horrible educational practices where you really focus on the kids who are just under proficiency and ignore the rest. And it's all because of this maniac approach to high-stakes testing. So what you see when you're standing in the classroom, you see the students in front of you, and you realize that every decision is made by a politically appointed or a politically elected person. And if you want to influence that, you have to have a voice. And when I was in the classroom, my union was my voice to get my voice to the policymakers.
Amen. Dennis Van Roekel is the president of the National Education Association. Their website is NEA.org. He's our guest in studio, and I'm sure he'd be glad to, like any teacher, take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. Now, we've talked about resources, and people say, well, there's just not enough money to go around. But you've been talking lately about a way where there is more money for schools without raising taxes on families.
Absolutely. April 15th, or I guess this year it's April 17th, all of us are preparing our taxes, and corporations are too. And so we started looking at loopholes for corporations. And we found from one of the studies that if they closed 7 corporate loopholes, it would generate $1.5 trillion, with a T, $1.5 trillion. Now, what you could do with just a portion of that, let me give one example. With just 24% of that, just less than a fourth, you could provide every impoverished child under 5 preschool education. And currently in America, only about 20% of kids in that category receive it now. What a difference you could make in their life and in the future of America if we invested in those kids early, with only 24% of those funds.
So are you talking about this is $1.7 trillion across the country, state by state by state?
Total nationwide.
Total.
That's in federal taxes. It's also tied in federal. And many states make their policies on tax write-offs or tax deductions for corporations based on the federal definition. So it impacts states. Let me give you one example. Mississippi, they did a study of the 150 largest corporations that do business in Mississippi. 105 don't pay any state taxes.
Whoa. 105?
Two-thirds of them.
105 out of 150?
Yeah.
Pay no state taxes?
No state taxes. And so
freeloaders.
I hear the debate all the time. They talk about the tax rate.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the tax rate is if you don't pay anything. And what we need is they need to pay their fair share. What we know is when you make the right investments and the right priorities, the communities and the economy grow. And investing in education, that's the foundation.
So what are you doing about this? I mean, you've got this information. I mean, do you give it to the White House? You give it to the Congress? I mean, you raise hell? You come on television and talk about it. All right.
We do that.
All right.
And one of the things we want to make sure is that the public has a chance. We have a website, NEA.org/loopholes. NEA.org/loopholes. There's a great little video, and we ask people to sign a petition. We ask them to stand up and speak for students, for schools, and for public education. And we ask them to call members of Congress to say, close the corporate loopholes.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to me as a campaign everybody could get on board, right? Close the corporate loopholes. I mean, the president's talking about the Buffett rule, said millionaires pay their fair share.
Right.
Yeah, all the more reason corporations ought to pay their fair share. Dennis Van Roekel is our guest, president of the NEA. Join the conversation at 866-55-PRESS. It's the Full Court Press, and we'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Man, I don't know. I'm a little distracted here. I just looked up the monitor during the break, and I saw an ad for Larry Kudlow Spring Break.
He's got his short shorts on.
No, that's the last thing I want to. I don't want to see Larry Kudlow in a bikini. God forbid.
A mankini.
Or a mankini, right? No. In studio with us, more seriously, Dennis Van Roekel is president of the National Education Association. We were talking about this program and this campaign to get corporations to pay their fair share. Boy, there's a radical idea, right? I mean, they bitch about the corporate rate, and the fact is, they're not. It's not a matter of raising it. It's just just pay what it is today, right?
That's right.
Or at least make an effort toward it. Don't pay nothing. Right?
What a defense it is that I don't pay any taxes, but the rate is too high. Kind of an illogical argument, right?
It is, indeed. And we gave you, we think, the wrong website. If you go to NEA.org, that's the National Education Organization's website, of course, association's website. But particularly for this campaign.
That's right. educationvotes.org/loopholes.
Okay.
And there's a lot of other information on there. So there's information on NEA.org, but on educationvotes.org/loopholes. I want everybody to see that video and sign the petition.
Educationvotes.org/loopholes. And these 7 loopholes that you've identified, do they include like the big oil? But the president has talked about the oil companies and their subsidies.
A lot of them are oil and subsidies, and these corporations are doing very well. The idea that we're giving them subsidies and tax breaks. Another set of loopholes that is very common is that they defer taxes on offshore revenue, which actually then is an incentive to make sure your money is shown as making it offshore so that you don't have to pay taxes.
And to keep it offshore, right?
That's right. Another thing they do is they allow them, depreciation, when you buy equipment, you get to depreciate that the life of the equipment. Well, what they do is they allow them to do that on a faster rate, shorter than the life of the equipment, so that you get to write the whole thing off and still use the equipment afterward. So those are just plain loopholes, and what we need to do is to close them. Everybody pay their fair share, make the right investments, and the right priorities.
The president, I think, has had a lot of success, at least in identifying the idea that millionaires should pay their fair share, and that is they're calling it a full court press. They launched today. Here it is. This package I got from the White House last night, embargoed until 6 a.m. this morning, East Coast time. So we announced this White House plan on the Buffett rule here on our show at 6 a.m. this morning. This is easily identified. The Buffett rule, you know what that means, right? That the boss should not pay a higher tax rate than the secretary. So
or vice versa. The secretary shouldn't pay a higher.
I'm sorry, right, yeah. He should not pay a lower rate than the secretary.
That's right. You got it.
So easy to understand and so difficult to articulate. Is there a package now that you have, a bill, somebody in the House or the Senate that will carry this for the NEA with these 7 loopholes?
It isn't a specific bill with a name, but we have not yet. But we have a lot of members of Congress who are very interested in doing this. And it's all, as you mentioned, it's really paying your fair share. If we just get everyone to pay their fair share, it really makes a difference. If you look at the years after World War II, from 47 to 79, in this country, productivity, the wages from hourly to the lowest 1/5 to the top 1/5, all went in lockstep. They all gained about at the same rate. The old phrase, a tide lifts all boats. Mm-hmm. And we built this incredible economy and an incredible middle class. If you look at from 1980 to 2009, it's totally out of whack. So productivity still went up about 80%. But those lower income, the lowest 1/5, their wages went up only 8%, while productivity was going up 80%. Meanwhile, the top 1%, their income went up 274%. So instead of the tide lifting all boats, it seemed like there's a lock system. And the wealthy people are in a lock, and that water goes up, and everybody else stays down.
The rest are stuck in the mud.
That's right.
Right. Now, I do have to ask you about this, too. There's so much to talk about when it comes to education. I know you have a screening. You're one of the sponsors of a screening tonight of this new documentary on bullying.
Yes.
I've seen it with a bully and a slash through it.
Yeah.
How serious a problem is this?
Very serious. We started a program ourselves about 2 years ago. It's called Bully Free. It begins with me. And the point is that every adult who works in a school and outside, you have to be the one. You can't stand by and let it go. And this thing that they're only kids, they'll grow out of it, that is the wrong approach. You need to stop it and stop it now. This movie is just heart-wrenching.
And is it, do kids have a response? Are you trying to tell kids they have a responsibility too? I mean, first of all, not to pick on others, and then if they see it, maybe to intercede? That's right. It's tough for a kid to do.
Absolutely. But I think if they get that kind of support from the adults around them, we can change this. We're screening this movie, and we want people to see it and to start talking about it. One of the things
is it available online?
I don't know the answer to that, whether it's online. It is opening in theaters.
On YouTube?
And it just really drew a lot of attention. But one of the things that we encourage is just to have the conversation. I think there are adults all over America, in schools and out, who did that tried to stop bullying. But there are others who didn't, and what we didn't have is conversation. So we provide training for our members out in the field to say, these are the kinds of programs you can have that make everyone aware. And when you make students aware that this kind of behavior just is not acceptable, it hurts kids. And the consequences are so severe for these kids who have been bullied in their younger years. It just tears your heart out to see and to listen to these kids describe what their life is. And we're talking about kids who are 7, 8, 9, and 10. And the weight that they carry on their shoulders every day, it just, if anyone can watch that movie and not have a tear come down their cheek, something's wrong.
Yeah, it's so important that you bring attention to this and all the other good work that you're doing. Dennis Van Roekel, president of the National Education Association, NEA.org is their website, and the special program to have corporations pay their fair share and get rid of some of these 7 loopholes is educationvotes.org/loopholes. Dennis, thanks for your good work. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it a lot.
All right. See you again. Right.
This is the Bill Press Show.